Welcome. I hope you can all hear me. I'm not mic'd, but my voice usually carries well enough, so I'm going to trust that it is. Thanks to the Washington Public Library for hosting this event and the others. Thank you, Carrie, for doing that. The partnership with the library is just wonderful. I'm Dan Henderson. I represent Washington for Justice, which is a grassroots organization here in our community. Our goal is to help our community become more inclusive and welcoming for all people. Now, this program today is part of our week-long series of events celebrating Juneteenth. And there is a program over on this far table to your right. There are some programs that outline all of the events that are going on this week. Something happening every day. So today, we are honored to have as our guest artist Jean Berry, who is from Coralville. Jean is a world-renowned artist. She's had exhibits of her work displayed in art galleries from Grinnell, Iowa to Johannesburg, South Africa. You're going to hear her story today and learn much about her work and her artistic creative process. We came into contact with Jean and her son Stephen. I'm going to introduce Stephen. He's back there working the cameras right now. He contacted us to donate 3 pieces of Jean's work to Washington for Justice and our Juneteenth event. We'll talk about these. You see them right here behind me. We'll talk about these 3 pieces in a little bit. But that is a fundraiser that is now active, and you can participate in it if you'd like to put in a silent bid on these pieces. I'll get more to that in a minute. Well, let me talk a little bit about Jean. Jean was born in, and I'm going to try to say this correctly, okay?
Okay.
Okmulgee. No.
Okmulgee.
Okmulgee,
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. It's just outside Tulsa. She was born there in 1938. She lived in Oklahoma till she was 3. Their family moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where she grew up. Then she moved to Des Moines in 1960. Iowa was lucky we got her up here. And she lived there for several years. She got her associate's degree in liberal arts from Des Moines Area Community College, her BA in art for drawing and sculpture from Drake University in Des Moines. She interned and worked at the Percival Gallery during her undergraduate work and afterward. She was married, had 3 children. Her youngest daughter died in 1985 at the age of 19, and she'll talk about that experience and how it influenced her work. She works in charcoal, oil stick, pastel, and found objects. I found that interesting. Just objects laying around. They become objects of art. So right now, join me and welcome Jean Berry to Washington, Iowa. So Jean and I have gotten to talk and get to know each other a little bit here before everybody got here. And so I want to thank you for being here, Jean. It's a pleasure to have you in Washington. Tell us about yourself and your work. And let's start at the beginning. Tell us about being born in Oklahoma and raised in Kansas City, and just kind of tell us that backstory.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. No, first I'd like to thank Washington for having me. I didn't realize that my son and his friend had set all this up.
Yeah.
And also I'd like to tell people that he did retire from Howard at 58, and he came home and he told me he was going to reinvent himself, but he didn't. He came home and reinvented me. And for the last, well, we had the pandemic, so that stopped some of it. But before that, the last year and a half, he had me going. So, and I see now he's back doing what he said he's going to do for me. But I'd also like to say that I'd like to thank him because not only is he my son, he's my agent, he's my critic, he's my installer, he's my driver, he's my everything, and he's the wind beneath my wings, and he's causing me to fly. And at 83 years old, to start all over again, it's quite a challenge. Okay, so now
you can handle it.
Okay, thank you, dear. Thank you, dear boy. No, but getting back to Okmulgee, I was born there, and my mom and dad, they moved to Kansas City, and I went to Kansas City, but actually it was 4. I went to Kansas City at 4.
Oh, 4.
And my dad worked for the railroad. He was a Pullman porter. But anyway, when he was gone, I had a babysitter, and her name was El Marie, and she was a young lady, and she wanted to be a fashion designer. And so El Marie was always drawing, and to keep me quiet and keep me busy, El Marie would give me paper and crayons and, told me to start drawing. So watching her, I decided that, okay, and this was fun. And I never did stick figures because I wanted to do what El Marie was doing. And I drew the figure. I just drew it. And so I stayed there about a year, but my brother and my sister and my brother and I were in Kansas City, and my sister, she came with us, but she didn't like Kansas City, so she went back, and she was staying with my grandmother and grandfather. So my father's sister decided that she was going back to Okmulgee, and she said, okay, do you want to go? And my sister had called and said that she would like to see me, and I wanted to see my sister too. So I go back to Okmulgee with my aunt, and I end up staying there until I was 8, I'm going on 8. And while I was there, I still did my drawing. Any surface was my canvas, anything that I could find, I'd draw on. And my grandfather was, I'd say he was a recycler before recycling came into being, and he was always out with his little truck cart thing that he had. He would go and he'd go to the neighborhoods where they had all the good stuff, and he would go through their trash, and he'd bring stuff home, and he'd bring magazines and books and papers and all that stuff. So he had a nice little library. I think maybe he had about 12 or 15 books, and he was always reading at night. He would sit, and he would be reading by his lamp and everything. So I watched him do this, the books, and one morning he left one of his books out on the table. So of course I was curious, and I went over and I looked at it, and of course I saw this wonderful white sheet of paper. You know that little fly paper there in the front of the book with this white paper and everything? I said, oh my God, my drawing paper, because this is what El Marie had used, was this clear paper. So I went and I tore the paper out, and each day I tore another one out, tore another one out, and tore another one out. And finally, I guess he saw what I was doing. He saw my drawings, and he asked me, he said, baby, where are you getting this paper? And I said, oh. I'd been caught. And he said, no, come on. He said, tell Lanny, where did you get it? And I said, well, And I went and showed him, because I used to have to get a chair to get up to get the books. And so I showed him. So he said, which ones did you tear out of? I said, no, I didn't know. And so he took all the books down, and he went through all of them, and he had about 4 of them left. And he tore those pages out of those 4 books. And he gave that paper to me. He said, and he got down on my level. He looked me straight in the eye, and he said, now, Lanny don't want you to ever destroy a book. He said, no matter what, you do not tear pages out of books. And he went on so much that he made them sound like it was a special thing, and that I was being sacrilegious by tearing these pages out. And true enough, I never did that again. But he was, I guess that's when he said that my artwork became kind of, as a little kid, kind of important to me. And then, of course, we went back to Kansas City when I was about 8. I went back, and my dad was still working for the railroad, and I was still doing my drawing, but by that time, El Marie had left. But my brother would buy me a Big Chief, because he's 8 years older than I am, and he would buy a Big Chief notebook, the tablets we used to write in, and he brought those for me to draw in, and so that's what I would do. But I would still go with my dad. My dad was a jazz musician. He played drums. And when he was in town, he always went to this club, which was one of the prestigious black clubs where entertainers came. And I would always go there with him, which I did when I would live there before. I went there and I'd sit at the bar and eat pretzels and drink, Shirley Temples while he was there. But this time we went back, and I was still doing the same thing. And this one day, I was there, and I was sitting at the bar stool, and this beautiful lady walked in. I mean, I thought she was the most gorgeous thing I'd ever seen, besides my mom. But it was Billie Holiday. And she came in, and she had on this, I later found out was a blue fox fur. She had a blue dress on, and she had this hat to match, and had this white gardenia on the side of the hat. And she had on these like Roman high-heel sandals that were laced up around the shoe, around the leg and everything. And she sat with me for, I guess it was about 4 hours, because the musicians that would come to town, they would always go to the orchid room, and they would kind of like they have their jam sessions with each other. And that's what they were doing that evening. She'd get up and she sang a few songs, and she'd sit back down and she'd talk to me. And she spent the whole 4 hours talking to me. And of course, there was a photographer there taking pictures. And she promised me that she would send me a picture, but it didn't happen.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 7.5.
7.5.
Yeah, about almost 8 years old when that happened.
Yeah.
And she did that. I really didn't realize who she was until later on in life, and realized, do you know what if I had a picture of myself with Billie Holiday now would mean? you know the significance of that would be? So, but I did do a drawing of Billie Holiday, and I had this friend, and he was Ron Eichen. He's passed now, but Ron was interested in jazz, and he knew everything about jazz. He knew stuff about it as well as my dad did, so I did give it to him because he was a fan of Billie Holiday's.
Yeah. So I know that you had an interest in art from when you were young.
Oh, yes.
And you studied art in Kansas City and Des Moines. Did you study art in Kansas City, or was that in Des Moines?
No, I studied in Kansas City also. I had a scholarship to the Kansas City Art Museum.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And all the way through school as a kid, since I knew how to draw, and there was another little kid there named Frank Bilberry, he knew how to draw, and whenever they'd have to do the bulletin boards, they always chose Frank and I to do the bulletin boards, and they changed them once a month. And through high school, I took drawing classes in Macy's downtown Kansas City. They always had this little art show for students, and they gave you gold keys. So I had 3 gold keys. I would have had 4, but I got married in my senior year, so I didn't, go back to school. And my husband we stayed there in Kansas City, and I had my second child, which is this one over here. And it went on, I guess I did my little drawings for a hobby. It was relaxing for me. But this time I could buy my own paper. I didn't have to use no lines, no big chief tablets. And things went well. Then my husband lost his job in Kansas City, and his sister lived in Des Moines. And she said, well, why don't you guys come on up here and see what you could do? So that's what we did. We moved to Des Moines, and he got a job there with a commercial cleaning service. And then from that, he started his own business. But in the meantime, I'm still drawing. I'm still doing this thing, and he thinks it's the little lady's hobby. This is something she does for her hobby, and which it was at the time. It was kept me relaxed. And we went on, and in his business, I was his secretary and his bookkeeper. He did send me to school to do bookkeeping. And then I went back and I got my GED, and I went back to Area 11 and got my AA degree. And through all of this, I worked with him during the times when he didn't have someone wouldn't show up. And when no one showed up, then I was a sub. I would go out and help him, and I did know how to wash windows. So I was washing windows with him at this one apartment complex, and it was during lunchtime, and I was sitting outside eating my lunch on the back steps of this apartment. And I noticed this beautiful flower garden, and the way the flowers were going, and this was in the fall, the late fall flowers, they're beautiful. And so I went and got my pencil and paper, and I started sketching the flowers and everything. And I didn't realize that the lady that lived in the apartment, she was watching me. And she came out, and she started talking to me, and she introduced herself. And I introduced myself, and we talked briefly, about how the weather and all that kind of stuff. And then she asked me, she said, "Do you like to draw?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I do it." She said, "You do it all the time?" I said, "Yeah, I do it. It's kind of a hobby with me." And she says, "You ever thought about going and taking classes?" I said, "Well, I would, but no, I really haven't." She said, "Well, I teach at the Des Moines Arts Center." She said, "I teach portraits in the park." And she said, "Well, might think about it." And I said, "Okay, I'll think about it." And her name was Cheney Rosenbaum, and she was an international artist also. So that was on a Wednesday. And that Sunday, she called me, and she introduced herself and told me who she was. And she said that she had gotten me a scholarship for her class.
Nice, very nice.
So that was an 8-week class, and of course it worked out because I could, my kids were all in school, and my baby was in school, so I could take my afternoons. It was we would set, but we get there from 1 to 3, about 3:15 would be over, and that was three afternoons a week. And I studied with Cheney for about a little over 12 years. And in the meantime, I went like I said, went and got my AA degree, and I did a little artwork there because Floyd Shepard, he was the art instructor. And Floyd also owned a little small African-American gallery. And so he gave me a job, and I worked there briefly for a while. And then, of course, tragedy hit, and I lost my youngest daughter.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. In 1985, was it? Your daughter, her name was Tony?
Tony.
Tell us how that experience maybe adjusted your career in some way or influenced your career.
Well, actually, to go around that, I have to start the basics. It made me angry, and I just knew God was going to send me a miracle, that she was going to be okay. She had gone to Mexico with her sister for New Year's, and she came back home, and she was sick, so we put her in Mercy Hospital, and they found out that she had been in Mexico, so they figured that she had mono, and they were treating her for mono. And then when that wasn't working, they finally did tests and everything, and they found out that she had an adenocarcinoma that had started in her kidneys and worked its way to her lungs. And when the doctor told me that, he said, "Jean, do you understand what I'm telling you?" And I said, "Yes, I understand. I know what you're talking about." But she didn't make it, and I became quite angry. I mean, even when I went to this grief session, they put me out because I was belligerent with the other people there. I didn't care how they felt. So the lady that conducted the grief sessions, she took me to the side. I guess I was there about 4 sessions, and she told me she didn't think that that was the best place for me. She said, "I think you need some one-on-one." So she was going to make arrangements to meet with me one-on-one, but I decided I didn't want to be with one-on-one. But in the meantime, everybody was telling me, "Oh, you should read Job. Job this and Job that. Oh, read Job, read Job." So finally I read Job. And to be honest with you, I thought Job was a fool. I'm sorry, it just dawned on me that you cannot replace one child with another child. It's just not done. So from that, I got real mean, and then I had my attorney, I was talking to him one day, and I broke down and started crying, and he asked me, he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do." He said, "Well, okay." He said, "But you got to do something. You can't keep on crying and being like this and being mean to everybody." So I said, "No, I can't." So he said, "All right, we'll see." So here again, like I said, faith steps in. Like with Cheney, that was God sent. And then with Bob, that was God sent, because he was reading in Sunday paper that they had a program for displaced homemakers. And he told me, he said, "I've enrolled you in this displaced homemakers program." He said, "I paid the fee, so you need to be there." I said, "Okay." So that was an 8-week program. And the lady that conducted the displaced homemaker program for a workshop, I didn't know she would notice, but they would have different speakers come in and talk to us about getting a career, going back in the workforce and doing what you need to do. And I would sit there and I would draw the speakers. I would do several sketches of the speakers, and I didn't know she was watching me. So towards the end of the program, she asked me what was I going to do, and I again told her I didn't know. She said, "Well, have you thought about going back to school?" I said, "Back to school?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "You already have your associate's degree." She said, "You only have 2 years to go, so you can go on over here at Drake." And I said, "Well, I don't have the money." She said, "Well, you can get a student loan." I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I could get a student loan." So she said, "Well, go on over to the registrar's office and see what you can do." So I went over to the registrar's office, and sure enough, they said I could have a student loan, and they enrolled me in the class. So then I went on and got my BFA. And doing all of this, I'm still doing my artwork, because in class, they, you have to exhibit your work, your student projects, you have to exhibit your work. And so I did this outside project, which was when I went to Drake and I saw this. I broke up some rocks and put around this manhole cover on the canvas, and then I put this little copper wire fence and everything around it and everything. And the morning when we went to critique it, lo and behold, there again said, I think the good Lord was with me, there was steam coming out of it. Steam was coming up, and everybody was saying, "Oh!" They thought I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know that was going to happen. I said, "Wow, okay," and that was a good thing. And then, of course, I had to do a program internship, and that's when I went to Percival Gallery, which at the time was the oldest prestigious gallery there. And I didn't know how to get in there, but the lady that I did a manual with called How to Get Your Bearings, which is another thing that C.C. Arnold that did, the Displaced Homemaker program, she told Judy Conlon about me, and Judy and I become very good friends. And so Judy, she said, "Well, I know." She said, "Well, I don't know Bonnie Percival." She said, "But I have a friend that knows Bonnie Percival." She said, "Now I'll talk to her about it next time we go down to Lake Okoboji." I said, "Okay." So she talked to Bonnie Percival, and Bonnie Percival called me. She said, "Okay, come down." And I guess I was down there for about a half an hour talking with Bonnie Percival. And she said, "Okay, everything went well. Okay, I'll see you. I'll get in touch with you." And I went home, and when I was walking through the door, the phone was ringing. And Bonnie Percival said that the internship was mine, and I was the first intern that they had. So that was my senior year. And after I graduated, Bonnie hired me for a year, and I was there. So I got to learn how to install artwork and the business end of what art was all about. In the meantime, we'll get back to Job. This was on a Easter Eve, before Easter this year, and this must have been 3 or 4 years later, 5 years later, after I graduated. And my goddaughter lives in Chicago. She comes down for Easter and New Year's, and she came down this Easter, and we went for this midnight mass. And we had dinner and everything, and then, of course, the minister started preaching, and it was about Job. And she said, "Oh, are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." She put her arm around me. She said, "Okay, you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. Nothing wrong." So that Sunday morning, we go to church, and Reverend Dow, he preaches about Job. And she holds my hand. She said, "Mom, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." Because everybody knew I felt about Job. And 3 days later, I'm in Hy-Vee grocery store doing the checkout line. These 2 ladies behind me, they're talking. You know what they're talking about? And I said, "Okay, God, I got the message. I got it. So I was due for a show, and I need to get some artwork together, and I couldn't find a theme, so I did Job. I went and I read Job again, and got his wife, and she told him, "Curse your God and die." And I got his 7 sons and his daughters and the messengers and his 3 friends, and I did all of that.
Now, the picture of Job is actually over there on
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love
Yeah.
your depiction of Job.
Job.
It's so realistic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, it's so human.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Now, there's also a strong feminist element in your work. Can you talk about how that's a motivation for you in your work?
Well, that's right after I graduated. I was at Merrill Hay Mall, and I had stopped and got a coffee, and I was sitting there drinking my coffee. And black men were always getting something, that they were bad fathers, So here comes down the mall this young black guy. Looked like he's about maybe 20, 22 or something, young 20s. And he had this little baby, and he had his baby in this little pouch thing that you carry around your neck and tie around your back and everything. Had his little diaper bag and everything. And he sat down in front of me, and he took his little diaper bag and set it over to the side, and he got his bottle out and fixed it and everything. And he took the baby out ever so gently. And then he fed the baby, and then he burped the baby, and he put him back in his little papoosey thing. And I said, "Okay," and I sit there. So I went home, and that's when I decided to do a series that I called Black Male Endangered Species. And then I did Saints of Egypt, which was from a book from a friend of my daughter's about these people that lived in Egypt, Mississippi, and this church that they went to.
Yeah, so there's a lot of spiritual themes in your work.
Yeah.
And I found this quote, something you said. I'm going to read it. It says, "There is a spiritual connection and movement in all my work and my experience, very intense, in the motherland, Africa, and that was the link I was searching for." And can you tell us about the experience of going? You went to South Africa. Tell us about that experience.
That was emotional for me. When we were flying into Johannesburg, and of course I like a window seat, and I looked down, and I saw the terrain, and the terrain was actually the artwork that I was taking over there. It was called Blood on the Field. I got the Blood on the Field was at Hansher Auditorium. I went with a friend, and we went to see a Wynton Marsalis concert.
Oh.
And it was titled Blood on the Field. And after hearing that music, I knew I had to do something for that. And I did the Blood on the Field, the 7 pieces, and I first exhibited those at the Des Moines Arts Center. And then we took them to South Africa. And like I said, flying over Johannesburg and looking down, I mean, I could see it's all of red and black and gold, and I could see all the colors. And then it was just something magical about when we stepped off the plane. I just felt that I was lighter, that things just lifted up. And the people there were just so nice. They just, just over for me. And I had the exhibit at the Ron Afrikaan University. And then I had a workshop in Soweto. And we were late coming back from Afrikaan to Soweto. And the workshop that I had, this is at the community center. And there was families there. There was a grandmother, the grandfather, the mother, the father, the uncle, the sisters, the brothers. The whole families were there. And when I walked in, I'm 2 hours late. These people stood up for me. And I said, wow. And the curator, he said, yes. He said, they're honoring you. And I said, oh, okay. So now I'm an artist. and that was it.
It sounds like a very, very strong connection that was made there.
Yeah, it was real nice.
Yeah. Well, Cheryl, let me change gears a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your method, your artistic methods, your process, and how you create. What is your creative process like for you?
Okay. First of all, I have 2 to 3 easels set up. I work on 2 or 3 pieces at a time. And I have to find something that stimulates me, something that clicks in my brain that says, okay, I want to do something to exhibit that. I want to know what it is. So I'll go and I'll collect a lot of pictures. I'll go to magazines, books, and see if I can find stuff that relates to what I want. And then I start working, and I can be working like here. I'll be working on this piece here, and then I'll look over here and I'll see something I can do over here. Then I'll be working in here and I'll see something I can do over here. And I go back and forth, back and forth. And I never really work on one thing at a time. I always work on several pieces at the same time, and I also like to work in series. I like for my pieces to relate to each other. What do you call it?
Yeah. Now, you started out kind of doing charcoal.
Oh, yeah.
But later on, you added more color?
Yeah, because people started asking me, where's the color? But I see color in black and white. I mean, I know everyone else, the average person probably don't see it, but I see color. And so I started adding just a little bit of color to my work. And I still do charcoal. Like when I get stuck or something that I can't get it to come together, then I'll do charcoal. I bring in the charcoal, and it usually works out. And I like, which sounds real crazy, but I like working on cheap paper. I don't like expensive paper. I like cheap paper. And I don't care, like they tell me that working on cheap paper is not going to last. But I said, that's not my job to preserve it. It's the curator's job to preserve the artwork.
That's right.
It's my job to create it.
Now, you also use corrugated cardboard.
Oh, yeah, that's come up later. Yeah.
Okay.
How that happened was my friend is artist in Fort Dodge, Madai. I would do something, and if I didn't like it, I'd tear it up and throw it away. And Madai told me no. He said, stop throwing stuff away. He said, get you a box and just throw it in a box. He said, and later on you can find something that you can do with it. And then I started collaging. And then I found that the cardboard, it had 3 sheets. You soak it in the matte medium, and it come apart, and you had the little rubber sheet, you had the smooth sheet, you had another little sheet. So I started using corrugated cardboard, and with the oil stick, and it really worked.
I want to mention your website here that's on the screen. I believe you have a book of your artwork that is on this website. Is that right, Stephen? Is there a book?
Yes, there is a book of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that as you scroll down on this page, you can see lots of different examples of Jean's work on there. So, visit the web page. I'm sure you'll find something you're going to like. Let me ask you this. You seem to be happy that we were celebrating Juneteenth down here in Washington. And tell us a little bit about just what does Juneteenth mean for you? And why is that why is it an important holiday?
Well, I really didn't think that much about Juneteenth until they became a national holiday.
Yeah.
Because in Oklahoma, now my family migrated from West Texas through Louisiana up to Oklahoma. And periodically they would celebrate Juneteenth. And this just came to me the other day when I was thinking about it, but my grandmother's church on Juneteenth, they used to celebrate, and everything would be red. They'd have a dinner, a red dinner. And the color red was the sacrifice, signified the sacrifice that they made. And I didn't realize as I was reading about Juneteenth again, I said, oh, okay, I remember that. And so it actually became a legal holiday. I said, okay, so
Yeah.
I think it meant something to my grandmother, and she was an important lady in my life.
Well, it's becoming more and more important as time goes on, I think.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
And we're just happy to be able to celebrate it here. And one of the things that we want to do in our efforts is to highlight the work, the achievements, and the talent of Black Iowans. So we have people like Jean as an artist. We're going to have Rochelle Chase, an author. We've got Audet. I don't know if you've heard of the musician Audet. Will be here Thursday night. I think it's important to recognize, blacks are such a small part of our population in this state, but the impact and the contribution they have made is so big that we don't always realize it. So this is one of the reasons we wanted to highlight your work. And as I said, when Steve contacted me, Jean wanted to donate these 3 works that you see. So what I'd like to do is have you maybe talk about each of these, if you don't mind, the name of the piece, and maybe just a little bit of background about what the inspiration was for these. Let's start with this one.
Well, that's Stations of the Cross, and Jesus Speaks to the Children. And that was from one of my series. I just figured that's what he would look like. He was a young man talking to the children. And
so the name of this one is Jesus Speaks to the Children. Okay, great. The one in the middle I thought was really interesting.
Okay, that's what I want to get back to. That's Tulsa.
Okay.
That's Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's one of the reasons I got interested in Juneteenth, too, because I know in the last year or so you've been talking about the massacre in the Black Wall Street. And also I had 2 shows. I had one in
The Black Wall Street Gallery.
Yeah, Black Wall Street Gallery. But they didn't become the Black Wall Street Gallery until I donated them my piece of artwork, my artwork. Is what they were going to. They said they would start the Black Wall Street Gallery, but they had a gallery there, but it was a small gallery.
And it was called the Black Wall Street Gallery.
No.
I got the picture of your mother.
We're going to have to resolve this.
Yeah, we got to
one
resolve that one. But anyway, that's a portrait of my mom and her 2 sisters. And that's called my Oklahoma family. They were Black Wall Street. But also in Black Wall Street, my last show that I had there, the city of Okmulgee, Oklahoma, made October the 4th, Jean Berry Day.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
So I got a little plaque and everything. Jean Berry Day. Although he says, it's only for one day, Mom. That was just one day. I said, no, I'm going back every October the 4th and celebrate my day.
You need to enjoy that.
That day, yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's
yeah.
right. This piece over here I really love is called Miss Hattie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one, maybe.
That one, she's old. During the time that I was doing Miss Hattie was the time that I was doing portraits of my family members.
Who was Miss Hattie?
Miss Hattie, it was an aunt of mine.
Oh, an aunt. Okay.
Yeah, and I was doing portraits of my family members. And I have a Dartha, a Leora, a Viola, and Ardelia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that there's probably nothing more that thrills you to have people hang your art on their wall. So,
yeah.
So please know, these are for silent auction. The sheets are over there. You're welcome to make a bid if you like here today. But I think we'll close off. But one more question I want to ask is, you're 83, but you're not done, are you?
I hope not.
No. I mean, in terms of your artwork, where's it going next? What are you doing now?
I'm doing nothing right now. But you have to have an inspiration. Something has to hit you and say, okay, I want to do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to do something. But actually, you guys, these pieces, these are prints, and they're really large pieces. I work big. I don't do small stuff. I work big. And these are really, you need to get in there. And the big pieces you can really see.
Yeah.
And like I said, I always said I want people to come to my work, and I want them to walk away with some type of emotion. I don't care what it is. You can say, oh, I hate it, or you can say, oh, I love it, or, oh, it's okay. As long as you have some type of reaction behind it. That's what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a few minutes where if you have questions, we'd love to have you. Now, this is going to take some bravery, okay? Because we need you to come to that mic because we're taping this. If you have a question, please come up and let's just have a little interactive time with Jean. Anybody have a question for Jean?
When you said very big, Jean, how big do you work? And you're kind of short. Do you get on a ladder, or what do you do?
I stand, but look, I had back surgery and I lost 2 inches, and like I told the doctor, if I known I was going to lose those 2 inches, he never would have touched my back. But no, I stand and I have a board. I have boards that plywood, side of the plywood board and everything. And the largest piece I worked on was like a 63 by 72, and that was the sending of the poor man into heaven. And it was a big collage about, had the eye of God, and the poor man was in a fetal position going up into the eye of God. And then we had the Roman Catholic, at that time was called molestation in the church, was running away from the eye of God. Then we had the ravenous wolf that was eating a piece of clenté cloth. And I had 3 little girls, and the little boys at the end, and they were in the hands of God. It's just, everything was in there. And then a guy was walking up to the eye of God, and a little boy was coming down from the eye of God. But I work pretty big.
Do you work on the floor or on a pallet or on an easel?
On easel. My easels have boards on them that make it big. So now I work like, 42 by 36 or something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But I like working real big.
Carol?
I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious about where is your studio? Do you have a space where you live, or do you have a separate place you go? It's always so important to have the right workspace.
No, I have a space now where I live, but it's cut down to about 3 times the size that I had when I lived in Des Moines. When I lived in Des Moines, I had something about as big as this area here. I had one side for Madden and Freeman, and the north side was the side that I had the big windows my husband put in for me to draw, because, the northern light and all that good stuff. And then the south side was where I did the Madden and Freeman, which overlooked downtown Des Moines. I had a nice studio there.
Well, it's nice to have one close at
Yeah,
home.
but this one I have now is downstairs on the first floor level, and it's, like I said, it's a third the size of what I had.
Oh, thank you.
So you've worked with a lot of teachers. Are you yourself a teacher? Do you work with young people and that want to be artists? And do you have that desire to teach, like your son and daughter? I know they're great teachers at the university level.
No, I was just telling Dan, I'm like in 16 hours of having my master's degree in fine arts. But I have a friend, Leslie Baker, and she's an artist. She taught at Ames at Iowa State, and I was talking to her about it. She said, "Well, are you going to teach, Jean?" I said, "No," because I'd gotten tired then of going to school. She said, "Are you going to teach?" I said, "No, I'm not going to teach." She said, "Well, what do you need a master's for?" I said, "Well, okay," so I quit.
Very good, thank you.
More questions? Anyone else? Well, then I want to kind of close this off and say thank you, Jean, for being with us today, and thank you again for the pieces that are on auction.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, you know,
Let's give Gene a hand.
this is my, like I said, this is my first exhibit since the pandemic. that I-
Well, it sounds like we might be able to get a show down here at, later on, maybe at
Yeah.
Art de Mystique.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. We'll get a show
Yeah.
of more of her work, so
Yeah,
that would be
yeah, and-
terrific. I do have one last question I'd like to ask you, and that is, for anyone, whether they're a young person or an older person or middle-aged, that's interested in doing art, what is your advice to them to encourage them to pursue that?
To pursue it, to do it. Because along the way, it's not what you do, it's who you know. And Bonnie Percival told me that. She said, Gene, she said, you can be the best artist in the world. She said, but if you don't have people backing you, no one will ever know it. So you have to look out for that. It's like I was just saying about Cheney Rosenbaum, that woman that taught at the Des Moines Art Center that got me the scholarship there for that Portraits in the Park. And then there was the C.C. Arnold at the Displaced Homemakers, and she's the one who told me to go back to school. And then Judy Conlon, who got me the internship at Percival Gallery. And different people just come along and they kind of push you along. You just have to watch out for them. But I feel if it's meant for you to have it, you're going to have it. Because actually, I've always wanted to draw. Matter of fact, what I wanted to do, and instead I got married and had babies, but I wanted to go to Pratt Art Institute in New York City is what I've always dreamed of doing when I was a kid. That's what I wanted to do. But of course, after I got married and had kids, I figured, okay, art career's over. No art career. But you can see it's never too late. Never
Yeah,
too late
because
to start.
you didn't pursue your BA until you were in your 40s.
Yeah, 42.
42,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's never too late. I just tell them, if you want to do it, just stick with it.
Yeah.
And keep an eye out for those good people on the side that are going to give you that little helping hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly true. I think anybody that achieves anything of, or makes contribution or significance has somebody that has encouraged them along the way and helped push them along. Whether it's a teacher or a parent or a friend or whoever, a mentor of some kind.
Yeah. Well, see, like right now, I got Steve Berry, alias S. Toriano Berry, that decided that he doesn't want a mother anymore. He wants an artist. So
Now, I would be chagrined not to introduce the next generation, which is sitting back there. Do you want to, Stephen, do you want to introduce this young man back here who's looking at his phone back there?
Yeah, we saw him hitchhiking on the way down. That's my son. Notice he doesn't even know he's involved. He's got his face in his phone. But this is my son, Thomas, and he's been a great help and inspiration.
Thomas is goes to City High, right?
Wes.
I'm sorry. Oh boy, I don't want to make that mistake. But he's a basketball player, and we're just happy he came along today. Thanks for coming. Anyway, thanks for coming today, everybody. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope now we've made a lifelong friend of Gene Berry.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's give her another hand.